Okay, good morning, everyone. Well, that sounds like the signal to start. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Bay of Plenty Civil Defence Emergency Management Group meeting for the 4th of July. I shall read a message about the recording of this. I remind members and staff that this meeting is being recorded and that the recording will be made available on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council website following the meeting. I also remind all present that local government decision-making affords no protection to councillors, council officers and the public for comments made during meetings subsequently challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. So with that, I shall ask that we open with a karakia, and I believe that Te Ua Chapman is keen to perform this for us, so thank you very much.
Morena tātou, ia koutou mā, i rau I ka mai, I raro I te tuni o tēnei o tātou whare, ka nui te mi atu ki a koutou. Kei noi tātou, I runga te matu te tamata wairua tapu anu. Whakawhita ia tana mātou ki a koe I iwa maumena ki tana mai a mātou I tēnei ata. Ako ge te kaupapa matu te upoko o te rangi me te whenua te mātāpuna o ngā mea katoa. O koe anō hoki te timatanga me te whakamutunga. Tono iho te tō mairangi o tō ata whai ki rungi a mātou. Here tia mātou I roto I tō korowai na nā ki tana korowai āraha moa ki tōnu atu I te pō e te ao te pō. Aumi e, hui e.
So, as you can guess, I'm not Faylane. So, Mayor Tunui has ended her apology for today. So, as Deputy Chair, I'm standing in. I've also got apologies from Councillor Scott and Mayor Drysdale. Are there any other apologies? Anyone here? No? Okay, so may I have a mover and seconder to accept those apologies, please? Councillor Campbell and Mayor Luca, all those in favour, please say aye. Carried. I will also note that Marty Grenfell is standing in for Fiona McTavish, James Jefferson is standing in for Mark Crowe, and welcome the new appointment at Hembop of Paul Winchills. So thank you for that. Moving through the order of business, I'm not aware of anyone for public forum. There are no items that are not on the agenda to discuss, I see. There's no change to the order of business. So number 5, does anyone have a declaration of conflict of interest? No? Okay. There are no public excluded items to be transferred to the open, so we move to the confirmation of the minutes for the meeting of the 28th of March. Can I have a mover and seconder to confirm those minutes, please? Councillor Moore, I'm happy to second those. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So now we move on to item 8, which is the recognition of service for David Bewley. And I'm going to go over there just to present a little award and say a few words. So I just want to say a few words about David for just to recognise him. Our jobs are very much people and community focused. We all come from different backgrounds with a shared goal that we want to serve our communities, and today we want to honour the service that you've given. This is your apparently 37th year of service. Not so when you started in Whakatane District Council, and you've been the long-standing GM responsible for civil defence and emergency management. You've been an integral part of the establishment of the Eastern Share Service Agreement, created in 2013, and played a part in the development of emergency management Bay of Plenty, which apparently this week has its 10th anniversary. So, you've sat on many committees and could always be counted on for engaging in discussions, asking the leading questions, and kept everyone on their toes. You've had extensive involvement in responses within the region. The Eastern Bay of Plenty having more than its fair share. Masatara, Edgecombe earthquake, and Stockbank cyclones, Otolo Wailili landslip, and of course Whakaari. Played a major role in all those events. At times when EOC was short-staffed, you did double and triple shifts, so good on you there. and to have I believe, a robust conversation with a former elected member when he had to evacuate in Moroa Drive back in 2010.
Bob Boones.
And you note also that you joined the crew that helicoptered into Ruatahuna in 2004 that supplies to the isolated community. It's been a relief for that, so thank you. We would like to thank David for his unwavering support and acknowledge the many years of service to civil defence and emergency management across the Bay of Plenty region. And please join me in thanking him now. So just as a little token of our thanks and appreciation for all you've done in emergency management, well done again, and congratulations. Thank you.
Tūtapa mai nuku, tūtapa mai rangi.
Ia mai Hawaii ki tā whiti are are.
Ka mai.
Ka kahara ki te manu ka tūtahi.
Ka puta whaki.
Ka mai iwi o te rohi mai nā puri a whare ki te hirau.
Ka kina te aho tapu.
Ko nā tirangi tihi, ko nā ti makino kātu whare tā ki ka werau.
Ko te kawa nui.
Ko ngā ti manawa, ko ngā ti whare kātu hai pō te kie. Ko te maria toku waka kai makaka te rangi o Māti aua. Te toki tangatanga i te rai. Hei!
A lovely way to start the meeting. We're moving on to item 8.2 now. It's page 19. We have some statutory appointments to get through. Stuff. So, 7 recommendations there. So it's approving the appointment of Namuta Putasi, GM of Strategy at Regional Council as alternate Group Recovery Manager. The appointment of Adele Hadfield, Strategy and Planning Manager for Regional Council as the alternate Group Recovery Manager. Appointment of Paul Warbrick, Manahotu Te Arawa Partnerships for Refuah Lakes as Local Recovery Manager. Appointment of Lou Hunt, Manager of Climate Change and Resilience at Whakatane as Local Recovery Manager. The rescindment of the appointment of Stacey Tahiri, Manager Operations for MBOP as alternate Group Recovery Manager. The rescindment of the appointment of Mike Node, Director of Civic Development to Tauranga City Council as Local Controller for Bay of Plenty, and the rescindment of the appointment of Dr. Lenny Woolsey, Head of Strategy and Growth, as Local Recovery Manager for the Bay of Plenty Civil Defence and Emergency Management Group. Cool. Right. Do I have a mover and seconder for those? Mayor Luca, Councillor Campbell. I assume there's no discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So moving on to page 26, and we're on to the draft Bay of Plenty CDEM Group Annual Plan 25-26. So Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Your Worship. I'd like to just present the group annual plan for 25-26. Some of the highlights will deliver 30 actions over the next year. 14 of those will be our high priority A actions. And just to highlight that there is some uncertainty coming with the bill, the EF bill, and that may require us to pivot and consider some of those actions under the annual plan. So I just like to say, see that, and as read.
Okay, are there any questions for Paul? Leslie. Councillor Mac.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for the report. I'm just looking on page 36 of the annual plan, the reduction section, and I could be mistaken here, but I would have thought the building of the stop banks would have rated a mention in the reduction section. You've got about the tsunami modelling and all the rest of it, but I would have thought all of the work that's been undertaken with regional council, which is to try and reduce the impact of flooding, would have been mentioned.
So the annual plan, I'm not 100% sure where there is. The annual plan is setting out what we're going to be doing this coming year.
It's still continuing, isn't it?
The reduction, that's the regional council delivery.
James, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think where Paul is leaning into is we will report some of that in our annual report, and pulling those threads from the respective councils, including the regional council, and we can revisit whether that work program is worthy of a mention in here, given it's part of BAU and part of BRC's LTP. But I take the point it is something we should celebrate, and I would expect we'd pick that up in an annual report.
All right. Thank you. Just a supplementary, if I may. And this is probably out of context as well, but with reduction and preparedness, like reduction and readiness, one of the things that a lot of community members ask you about is, because you're doing these things, is it going to make any impact on your insurance premiums? So is there a wider discussion going up the line or across the line about, for example, council owns a lot of assets along our riverbank, and we've got stop banks all being built with regional council, so we're trying to actively prevent or mitigate disaster. Is that going to help with insurance companies? And I'm not really sure who to throw that one to.
I'm through the chair. I'm happy, and I may flicker past to the lead, because I would expect that those conversations at a national level would be had through NEMA and the new Natural Hazards Commission. I do note that it mentions it is mentioned in the Commission new plan, but I wonder if Lily's got any more to add. But I think that insurance premiums are a dark art, and I'm not sure that I'm certainly not fit to answer that. So I don't know if there's thinking national level.
Thank you through the chair. I'm happy to take that specific question away and give you a more direct answer. I think what I might like here, if I may, is you have a real opportunity through your 5-year strategic group plan to identify the hazards that are important across the region. And the way the annual plan fits into that 5-year strategic plan is annually we want to be reporting on what the group had agreed in that 5-year period to meet that 5-year strategic period. So there is an opportunity, I think, in the 5-year plan to really target which hazards you identified and agreed as a group. So really my key point there is, through your group plan, your tool for our committee here to agree what hazards we want to identify and ultimately manage. But to the earlier point, we'll take that question back and answer it more specifically.
Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ermick has brought up a very valid point here, and I was, as late as yesterday, I was in Maratar, and Maratar residents have had some pretty unnerving response from insurance companies that they're just about uninsurable now because of the fact that they've got an ocean in front, 3 creeks that we know have got history, a hill that has had huge history over the years. So they are in a bit of a quandary over there. And I was talking to one lady yesterday who is actively getting stuck into her insurance company. So this is a real concern to me anyway, right along the coastline, and not just the coast, but up around our rivers. Insurance companies are got to be very careful. She tells me that she was paying her insurance monthly, and that then gives the insurance company a bit of an out. They give you a month's notice, and guess what? You're not insured any longer. So you've got to be very, very careful about who you actually pick as an insurance company, and also read the fine print. So that's something that's really, really concerning to us here in the Eastern Bay particularly, but it should be everywhere, to be honest. So something to think about, Lillian. I hate to upset the insurance companies. You're right, but it is a bit of a dark thing to talk about. But the insurance premiums are going up, and people are really starting to look at it, which is good. It's good because otherwise we just wander off and keep paying, and then all of a sudden, hello, bang. But Maratā has had the red flag pointed at them already, so that's something we've got to be really conscious of. So thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Luca?
Yeah, I mean, also on the risk reduction aspect, say around page 36, where we talk about the link to planning activities. Yeah, I haven't actually seen. There's a fault hazard map that GIS has produced, which can't zoom out very far, but that shows that there are 4 faults that run through Maratā in the region that we've identified for development. Now, there is guidance on what you're supposed to do in respect of building near faults. There's also one that runs through Tani and across the bridge, but we didn't know about that. When we do know about faults, then in the area of prevention, then there should be some link to the planning system and it doesn't seem to be referenced anywhere here. So I just searched the word faults and I don't find it anywhere. But I don't see that link.
But I think this is an annual plan, not a long-term spatial planning document. But James, did you want to...
Through the chair, and Paul may have more detail, but we have done a whole lot of work in the natural hazards scape report, and that will be coming. Timeline on that?
Yeah, so that timeline is for the next cycle. That will be through the landscape plan. Yeah,
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions? I will also note we've got Mayor Tapsell, Councillor Schuler online as well, but I don't think we've got any questions. But okay, Deputy Mayor Emick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, probably just following on from the reduction and the readiness, and I appreciate that this is the organisation's annual plan, not our district councils. But we had that really incredible presentation from a couple of the ladies a few years ago about going across to Japan, and who they reported back to us, and Whakatane Council actually brought them into our council, and the local council took it to the Rotary Club. And the story that they tell, and this readiness, and the tsunami tendenko philosophy that they're teaching in all the schools and retirement homes and that in Japan. I don't know whether education sits in this reduction and readiness part of the annual plan, and again, there's really not much mention about that. So if it's not in here, where would it be in it?
Through the chair, look, I'll give a very short director's update towards the end on behalf of Mark, and I think there's some encouragement in that space coming from the strengthening emergency management roadmap that we've been waiting on, and I'll touch on that a little bit more, but certainly a real focus into community resilience, and that's something Lily may touch up on her update as well.
Okay, so I think we've reached the end of the questions. So we have 2 recommendations there, to receive the report and to approve the annual plan 25-26. Do I have a mover and seconder for those, please? Mayor Moore and Councillor Campbell. Great. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So now we move on to the Bay of Plenty Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Recovery Framework 2025, and I have Paul again to remain, and Julian to join us as well. Julian.
Tātou ko Julian Rewiti ahau, e kai whakaoranga, takatūranga mahi. During peacetime, I'm just the principal advisor for recovery for MPOC. When the balloon goes up, the group recovery manager for the draft group recovery framework has relied on learnings from the last 3 years. 3 years in New Zealand has been quite fraught and lots of activity in the recovery space, but it also showed some of the inconsistencies, the ways of working together across the country has been light and not well structured. So what we did is that our group recovery plan was 2015, well before events that have occurred like Edgecombe. So what we've done is updated how the group works together. I'll just take you through a brief presentation on that. Assume I got this right. Just reminding, this document is not expansive in terms of how we reach into the community. This is a way of how councils work together, including the regional council as part of the group. And that picture up there, you will notice that the General Affairs is sitting on the right-hand side, not a member of a group. We have to acknowledge the offshore islands as part of this framework for recovery. Now, I also point out recovery is only one of the 4 R's, but it tends to be the most expensive and the most impactful on the community. So a real focus in this document around that. What we do look at is the framework of how to work together, what our roles are, phases of recovery, where it flows from civil defence through into councils, different acts. And the other thing is that this document isn't about trying to predict too hard how big the game's going to get played. So it is a risk management approach across all of us. The purpose of this plan is to give us a sound recovery framework across our CDM group. And it's confirming our roles and structures and really focuses on those initial processes and actions to support the group's recovery management and realistically to buy us time as a team to make sure that our leadership teams, our CEs and mayors have time to figure out the bigger game. So this is a standing document that allows you to do that. Additionally, we have to take into account that for all moderate or major to severe events that occur in New Zealand, either at regional or government level, the government has always put in a bespoke arrangement. And that was the same for Cyclone Gabriel, Christchurch, Kaikoura, and events. So there is always an overlay that has always occurred. So what we're saying, however, taking that into consideration, the framework we produce there is quite readily able to manage it because it's just the way of how we all work together. So whether government does that or not, this is a good, solid framework for working together. For consultations, been through a range of more specialists, but including the Public Service Commission, NEMA. We've incorporated Hazards Group, a whole lot of people within this framework, but particularly people in the last 3 years who have been heavily into the game for Gabriel, for example, and government. So we've got a lot of background. But interestingly, a lot of the document is based around the learnings that actually came out of Edgecombe. It has actually driven a whole lot of thinking nationally. So if we think of that, when Edgecombe flooding occurred in 2017, very few processes were in place. And that's been a bit of a linchpin of how governance and how it was managed at senior leadership and council level to give a bit of a picture of good practice. And strangely enough, a lot of stuff that's come out of that has flowed into the national way of doing things, whether they know it or not. So just in terms of the phases, we do say in the document, you've got to remember the phases. There's a front end, but we link up with all the things about readiness and response, not just recovery by itself. There's an initial emergency, then there's a really big expensive tail, and at the end, or partway through, you've got a lot of learnings and community, a heavily loaded community. I just want to highlight that that little sliver there is the response component, which is really important to set the framework for recovery, but it's not the whole game. The big money is on the right-hand side, the big community impact is on the right-hand side. So we've got to accommodate that within our document, even though it is a CDM document. So when we were thinking about a pragmatic approach to how do we all work together, we were looking at the group response. So really thinking regionally, we started to think, well, when and what sort of resourcing and things do you need to put in place collectively, depending on the event? Really hard to predict. So we did a very basic analysis on minor, moderate, major, severe, and catastrophic. We don't get too hung up about that because it's about the consequence, not what the event is. So, for example, the consequence out of many types of different events are what we're focusing on for recovery. But to give you a feel, this is focusing at a regional level. For example, a minor event could be Auckland tornadoes, 50 homes. A moderate event regionally would be Edgecombe floods, but at a local level, that's significant on the LTP, absolutely significant. On a major level, we start talking about Cyclone Gabriel and a severe, so these are examples, Canterbury earthquakes, and then you've got that Hikurangi subduction. But to put it in perspective, Auckland about 32 million for a minor event, regionally minor. For Edgecombe, it's about 170 with 60 million in insurance. But there's game kicker. The major goes to 14.5 billion for Cyclone Gabriel. So quite readily, Bay of Plenty missed the bullet when Cyclone Gabriel decided to shift slightly. But those are the sort of numbers. Out of that 14.5, 4 billion is insurance. On a severe event, Canterbury was 45 billion. COVID was 62 billion. But the predicted Hikurangi subduction is 144 billion. So these are big numbers. But I think if you put it like that, you can say, well, at a regional level, where do we sit in terms of resourcing? So at a regional level, we worked out that for those minor events, it tends to be local council only. We would support regionally, come in as a group, get a few people in there. When it's Edgecombe, it's quite different. At a regional level, we've got a bigger team supporting at group level. You will have a large team at local level. We know the numbers because Edgecombe was quite a unique situation to be able to measure that. But this is where the document truly focuses. It says when you hit that major and severe, we can't predict whether you need 10 people or 100 people. So what we've said at a regional level, we need to have an interim team to start up, and you'll see that in Appendix 3. And the importance of that team, it's a small team, relatively speaking, for the size of event. That the failing in New Zealand is that when you're in response, you're just about to get out of response, the controller says, I want to hand recovery over. And the failing in New Zealand is, who do you hand that to? And it tends to get handed to councils. No structures in place, no ways of thinking about that, really inconsistent. And there's a big gap for the elected representatives, big gap for the senior leadership team, big gap for government, big gap for community. So what we're saying is, as a team, when you're hitting that major event, now that major event regionally is that size, but that could be severe for local, if you have to think like that. So we're seeing that the document allows you to think at local council level, what's your initial team to get you going? So we are able to provide you sufficient information to say, what's the big game you have to play going on? I think it's quite easy to say you will soon get some response whether you're at 170 million or 5 billion. It's not going to be a hard call to say get that team running before you get out a response.
Let's ask the question.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Emick.
Thank you. Thanks, Julian. So in terms of attracting funding at the different levels, like who applies for the funding? So does the regional organisation apply for it and then distribute it, or does it support councils applying for it?
All of the above, and there's no guarantee of recovery funding in any context. So most of the funding comes directly from councils. This is outside of CDM. There's a bit of CDM funding, or public service agencies like Waka Kotahi, MSD Health, and we have we've indicated in the document funding streams that have just come out from government, pretty hard to get into, or Cabinet will make a decision to give you additional funding. They will tend to directly deal with the council involved. For example, Auckland, billions of dollars went into the future of severely affected land. The buyout of over 800 properties with council. So that was a big negotiation, 50-50 split, one-on-one type situation. So funding isn't, and this is where you go into as council, there is no guaranteed funding stream here, but this team initially will at least help you try to make sure you can see the levers that you may need to pull, that you may need to go up the chain to government. But that's at the regional level, and I'll get on to what we're at the local level. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
And a way of working, the document shows various ways of how do you pull recovery together. That's just an indicative slide. We'd like to work with everyone. We've got quite a strong agreement with our officers at local level and regional level. And that methodology is really your well-being council. It's your built and economic and those natural and community, and it's that sort of well-being. But the most important thing about that graph that we work to is on the right-hand side, it all ends up on your LTP implications. There's no way around that once you get to major and severe events. So you're talking Hawke's Bay, Tairāwhiti, the Edgecombe was a big LTP. So working together collectively, it does end up on your right-hand side. It's also how public agencies and government work. They tend to work in the funding streams on those left-hand sides. So it's a way of working together. There's a lot more information in the document. A more specific chart is roles and responsibilities, but realistically, the bottom one there talks about local councils. We don't dictate how that should look in terms of your government structure, your local leadership groups. It really kicks in at local leadership level for major events for you. So we are asking that the local councils think about that component on how it works for you. Sorry, if I just go back. On the left-hand side, that's a regional picture of how regional leadership might work. In reality, that won't kick in unless it's a major event. Otherwise, it's really done at local level. So the recommendations there to finish up is just receiving the report. Removing that plan that was a good plan at the time, but it had no learnings. You will also find in the plan you have, there's a lot of practical, functional things that you do in the various phases. So that's really important. It proves this framework. Remember, the framework is really a risk management document as well. It says, let's not try to predict the big game, but at least get resources in place and have an understanding of recovery so you are not left in the dark when you get out of response. You've got a team to work with until you have time to make sure you establish your councils at the right level. And That's the same as Auckland. They started with about 20 people, end up with 200, and then they end up with 50 navigators. So it's a massive operation. So you don't want to start and try to predict that. The important one there is the KEG have proved that the local councils do their local recovery framework in alignment with this. 90% of it is you take the group and you just copy and paste. But you do have to have a little bit of conversation at local government level about what your leadership approach is and what startup teams you think is appropriate for your council. For example, TCC, fairly big organisation, Hodaki, got to be practical about who their startup team is. So it's horses for courses, not dictating. But we also say if you hit a major level, regional, that's affecting a huge number of councils, you've got to be relatively self-sufficient for a period of time, even in recovery, because the event is big. It's not little, and it takes time for everyone to build up resources. So we do, again, say be as self-sufficient as you can for a short period of time.
So Julie, a question for me. So around recommendation 4, I just wanted to understand, does that put a lot of work for TLAs, or is it accommodate, having to think about things, or is it?
No, in terms of work, it's our discussions with your local recovery managers in particular to get that ball rolling. 90% is we will support and help develop that. For example, Western Bay, 90% of they've already kind of taken and preempted it, and they will think about the council component. No, huge amount. I don't think, in terms of a document, that there's a lot to add. It's like an addendum to the group plan, because most of the things you do at group will be what you'll do at local. And we're there to support. But there are things like governance discussions. You want to know how your governance will, what your leadership position going to be, and those sorts of conversations. So no, there's a lot of groundwork already being done.
Mayor Luca.
Can I just ask about the Auckland situation? You said that there was a buyout of 800 properties and it was 50-50 funded by central government, local government. Now, I'm sure Auckland City Council just didn't have a lump of money sitting on their balance sheet waiting just in case a natural disaster should ever turn up. None of us seem to. I mean, I think at one time we had certain contingency funding put away, but when balance sheets come under pressure, the first thing we do is pick away at that sort of contingency funding. It's not really an adequate solution, but Auckland found the money. Where did they find it from? Just by rejigging some of their spending priorities?
Really, really interesting. It's a big chunk of money. And the reason for Faisal and the buyout is because the insurance question, insurance would not insure those properties going forward unless council could guarantee they could be protected. And so it was the whole, and council did their calculations and said, we can't feasibly protect that for the money that would cost to protect those 800 to 900. Huge community issue. Huge community. It's a balance sheet issue on the LGP rejigging. I don't know the detail whether there's an increase in rates on that, but definitely it will be a number in their LGP. So yeah, they didn't have a contingency plan for that.
No. And are they building one now as a result of an experience they've already had? Probably not.
Probably not. We're keeping a close eye on what they're doing around that. Yeah.
As for insurance, I think we're moving into a world where there won't be insurance. You can forget it. And Allianz has already flagged that. One of the world's biggest insurers said that, it's going to be everything for themselves eventually. They're prepared for that.
Thanks. Thank you for the report. A lot of things in there. Yeah, some really interesting stuff. Just want to touch on the partnership with iwi. At the start of our triennium, we all went to our civil defence. We had a clean sweep of many years across the Bay of Plenty. There was some frustrations. Edgecombe was quite raw. in the minds of a few people there. And there was questions asked, what does the partnership actually look like? Me, Faylene and I gate crashed our Zone 3 meeting in Tairāwhiti and got to go and see the bunker firsthand. And their partnership with iwi is very different to what we actually have set up. Where they aren't just partners, they're on the ground, they've got training, which makes sense. Just for example, us, through Gabrielle, we were looking between 400 and 500 homes that had to be evacuated, and we had a short window. The decision was made early to declare early. We had 2 police officers available to help with that. Without iwi, even every single council member was involved. We just couldn't have done it without iwi. So the partnership moving forward, is it going to bring them into the picture where some of them are going to get training? They're going to ask this, that, and it doesn't just benefit Māori, it benefits those people that got evacuated weren't Māori. Like, they've got places to go. And there's a lot of good work. I know there's been a lot of good work going on with building resilience into the maraes with water tanks. Central's done their part. So I just really want to know, what is that partnership? Because I want to know if I'm lucky enough to get back in, after October, and we go along to our first big event and we pick our people, I want to be able to answer those questions and give them some clarity. This is what a partnership should look like.
So, really, really good question. A lot about how far we took this as an internal document and how we work together. On page 77 is your picture, and it really is an important question. At a regional leadership level, we indicate Māori. We do not say what the framework is, and what we're saying in the document, you'll see there's no exclusion to being in the response phase. There's no exclusion how we set up the transition phase, and there's no exclusion how we set up the leadership group. What we're saying is we need to develop that in the annual plan. The Bay of Plenty annual plan says we're going to develop the framework of working together with Māori, which is an important thing. What I also didn't want to do is make sure we were doing recovery separate to your resilience, to your readiness, to your response phases. So it is there, it's indicated, there is work to develop that. And the other thing of doing your local plans is 90% of that engagement and on-the-ground stuff will occur in that local leadership group. Again, we encourage councils to be inclusive in that space. So this is a development arena for us, and it's a real strong focus. How do we develop that? Interestingly, the same thing occurs under that next heading on the same page as public service agencies, who tend to be at arm's length to us. But how do we develop that? So we've only indicated Māori, we say it's there, we need a process going forward. We've indicated in the annual plan that's an important role for us to develop. And already on the ground level, we will be doing work at local level to talk about what is recovery, how do we get that into the picture. Malika?
Just sort of a follow-up on that, and that, up the valley here, there's some work going on in some of the marae for building in resilience water systems and energy systems that I don't see happening even at a national level. Our electrical system, as fragile as it is, we're sort of lucky to keep it going as it is. So is there something that this committee should do in terms of sending a message to government? Because, the national system depends on the market, and the market is always about, stripping things back to the bare bones and not, the very ethos of the market is not to build in resilience, because that's a waste. So is there a message that we could be sending, a political message? I think we should. You've got marae that are doing a better job of it than at the national level.
And that is a really valid point. The EM bill that came through, there was a lot of messaging in that about resilience, about how do you do that, how do you incorporate it, what does that mean? recovery, and the answer really is the more you do in that space, the lower the cliff. The recovery is the ambulance. You can lower the cliff, the better off we'll all be. There's many avenues, but that's a hard call. It has to be a politically driven conversation.
Well, this is a political body, so perhaps we should write some letters. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that might need some thought. I don't want to sort of
I know,
put a decision on the hoof like
thought,
that.
but I'm putting it out there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay, so I see there's the four recommendations there. Do I have a mover and seconder for those recommendations, please? Mayor Moore, I'll second that. So there's no debate. I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you then. So moving on to page 94, I'm on to the draft group welfare plan 2025-2030, and I welcome Stace for this one, I believe.
Kia koutou, e ngā rangatira, nāku whakamarumaru. Stace Tahiri, Emergency Management, a Plenty Operations Manager. Through the chair, just to let you know that I am on duty, so if my phone goes on duty, or if my phone goes, I will have to answer the call. Hopefully it shouldn't after last night. Everything seems to be heading up quite nicely. And apologies, I'm running a little bit behind the eight ball. I'm presenting this paper on behalf of Nikki Parker, our Group Welfare Manager. As an overview, the 2019-2024 welfare plan was noted to still be fit for purpose, and this was an administrative review, not a full rewrite. All responsible agencies had the opportunity to provide input. Welfare managers and Nemus Bay of Plenty Rep Maggie Chum also contributed, and due to the minor scale of change, the consultation was with the Welfare Coordination Committee. The key updates to bring to your attention was an acknowledgement to Mātauranga. It's now formally recognised in the plan. There were a couple of tables deleted around local welfare plans as they were no longer required. The idea being the group welfare plan supported by local SOPs, which is sort of tailored to each community. It saved duplicating work, essentially. There was the paragraph added in part 3 to acknowledge and prepare for catastrophic scale emergencies. New content in section 3.2.3, which covers responsibilities and coordination in offshore islands. And sure, it's all there. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I think that pretty well answered the questions I had, which was what are the key changes and anything significant. It doesn't sound like it's anything significant, but I think you just confirmed that.
Yes, that's basically.
Does anyone else have any questions for Stace on this one? Okay, looks like everyone's pretty happy with that. So there's 3 recommendations there: to receive the report, approve the adoption, and approve the assumption of the old version. So I'm happy to move that. Was there a seconder? Mayor Luca, wish to speak? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Stacey. And I'll now ask for Paul Greenshields to come back up as we discuss the group's quarterly performance monitoring report 24-25.
Chair, so we have our monitoring report for the 4th quarter. So all the activities are on track, and just to the data that is sitting in here was pulled 4 weeks ago, so there is a lag in this report on what we will be able to show you in the annual plan report and the roundup of all activities for the past financial year. Will show that we meet all our activities and completed those that are on track.
Any questions?
Any questions? No? Nothing online? Tanya, you seem to be moving? No? Okay, so everyone's happy with things today. So there's just one recommendation to receive the report. Mayor Luca moved that. Seconder, please. Mayor Moore. No debate. Okay, so I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Thank you, Paul. So you're tag teaming today, so if I invite Stace to come back up.
We're getting the steps.
Yeah. So we're at the group training KPI measurement, page 171.
Kia ora koutou. Well, again, through the chair, I'll take this particular report as read, as we usually do. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Deputy Mayor Mick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, Dave. Thank you for the report. It's probably not directly relatable, but with Gabrielle, and I know this is about training, how many of our members were able to go over and observe what they did in the recovery phase? Like, did we consciously get some of our people over there to reflect and learn?
Through the chair, yes, we absolutely did. It was mainly led by our principal recovery manager who just gave you the presentation, Julian Doherty. And throughout the entirety of Gabrielle, we deployed our people over. We supported, as soon as we came to the understanding that we weren't going to be directly affected, we started deploying. So we had people there throughout the response, through all of the councils from Whakatane all the way through the other 7, and in the recovery. So, in short, yes, we did.
I'm just wondering if it's worth a measure, you know, like when different people attend to learn.
And through the chair, we actually have that measure, and we put it in the last annual report. Maybe not the last annual report, the report that we released after Gabrielle. And if you would like, through the chair, we can call those back up for you and redistribute out.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? No? Okay, so the recommendation is to receive the report. May I have a move and seconder, please? Mayor Luca. Councillor Campbell?
Yes.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now move on to, swapping back again, we're going to the tsunami modelling update. We welcome back Paul, Kieran Miller, and we've got external Dr. Jean Roger by Zoom.
Kia ora all. So in late March, the Tsunami Ready program reached a significant milestone with GNS Science providing us with the finalised inundation model for our region. So this essentially brings us into the next phase of the program, which is to take that inundation modelling, that data, and to turn it into our evacuation zone for our region, which is exciting. A couple of things to note with receiving that data. With the changes to the new Lagoima Act, we're now required to share that inundation data publicly. So that is something that we're working through at the moment. But it does present a risk that now that the inundation data will be made public, and we also have the public evacuation zone, which is the zone that we would be promoting. So there's the potential for some confusion amongst the public around differentiating between those aspects, but we're working on a strategy to work through that and ensure. So we've got Dr. Jean Roger from formerly GNS Science here to present on how they did the tsunami inundation modelling. So as of the 1st of July, John now works for the Earth Sciences Institute of New Zealand. So I will pass on to Jean to talk you through around how they went about conducting the inundation modelling for our region. Wasn't an easy process, so John, thank you, Jean, for joining us this morning.
Welcome. Over to you, Dr. Roger.
Thank you, Kieran, Kiara Kotu. Thank you for inviting me for talking about the project we led at GNS Science or former GNS Science about tsunami inundation modeling for Bay of Plenty. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. I can probably increase a bit the size of this. There's probably a better way. Full screen, yes. Is that better?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. I will try to make something short because this presentation was done a few weeks ago in Tauranga for a 45-minute format. So I will condense a bit my presentation. Don't hesitate to cut me if you need more precision or something like that. So this project, I will go through the generalities of the project, some constraints, the deliverables. One of the biggest part of the project was about dealing with a digital elevation model of the whole Bay of Plenty, how we choose the tsunami sources for our modelings, what were the numerical modeling challenges we met, and what are the outputs of the modeling, how they look like. So the generalities of this project, it started in July 2023 with an initial deadline in September 2024 with a cost of $350,000 with the objective to provide a comprehensive set of tsunami inundation models in agreement with the DGL definitions of yellow, orange, and red zones. So it's not really, initially we decided, the request was about a level 4 modeling framework, but actually level 4 is nearly unreachable because level 4 means that we have to consider all the sources that may trigger tsunami for the region, and we don't have the current capability for doing this kind of thing. So we ended up to decide to model something more level 3-4 modeling instead of level 4 or level 3. So intermediate modeling. The team is made of 8 people. I was leading the project and mainly working on the DM production and the reporting, but I was also helped by other tsunami scientists at GNS Science and our hydrodynamic modeler Xiaoming Wang, who was the guy who was developing the code, the modeling code, and doing the testing. So very important person. And Laura Hughes did all the numerical modeling for this project. All the other ones had her help us for designing the sources or having some help for the outputs preparation to provide to MBOP and all this thing. So this project was associated with a lot of constraints. The first one was to build a high resolution DM of about 10-meter resolution, spatial resolution for the whole region. So the region is quite big, you all know it. And it was a big challenge for us because that's the first time we had to manage with this kind of DM size. We had also to remove all the flood control measures. It was discussed during the project proposal that maybe the tsunami will be able to destroy some stop banks, for example, for rivers. So it would be better to simulate what would happen if all the structures would be gone due to this tsunami. We had also to model to run the simulation at mean high water spring values. So Bay of Plenty emergency management Bay of Plenty provided us some values for that, and we found a mean value for the whole bay, even if it's logically different from one place to the other one. We also had to determine the scenarios that we're going to run from the National Tsunami Hazard Model last version of 2021, the last version published. The other challenge for Bay of Plenty is that it's concerning 2 tsunami warning zones. So usually we are dealing with only one zone for example, for Hawke's Bay, or we did for Westport, for example. So it's only one zone, and for Bay of Plenty, it's 2 zones. So a big challenge because each zone will have different tsunami source impacts. And we had also to output different types of results. So the first one were the extent of the 3 warning zones, but also the maximum tsunami offshore elevation and the maximum flow depth overland in separated files. Last things, we had to discuss about the critical infrastructures with the list provided by MBOP. So I will not go through the deliverables, but we had basically to provide some quarterly reports and a final report and the final draft dataset and the final datasets. Due to various constraints and challenges, we had to prepare 2 contract variations, and which led to the end of the project in late March 2025 instead of September 2024. So that's the digital elevation model we put together for this project. So it looks nice like this, but it was hours, hundreds of hours of work to put this together, to collect all the data needed for the marine part, but also for the land part, and to join with many different data sets. So I will show you this thing, not in details, but just to give you an idea. So for the marine part, in most places, we don't have multi-beam data, for example, high resolution data surveyed by boat, for example, with the Tangaroa from NIWA. So we have to manage the gaps using nautical charts, for example. So it means that we have to use these points, all these sounding points provided by LINS, and make some interpolation processes to smooth the maps and be able to produce this regularly spaced DM for our modeling purposes. We also had to deal with the river banks, the stop banks. So I'll show you this very quickly, but it was a major constraint. We had to remove them, and MBOP provided us with the central lines of the stop banks, which was sometimes not really the central of the stop banks. You see the stop bank is here, and you see that the line is more on this side of the stop bank. So we had to prepare some buffers to remove these stop banks, and obviously, we were not able to have the same buffer for all the stop banks, so we had basically to do it one by one, which took lots of time. We had to merge with some previous DM, like this one from NIWA, but as you can see, it was not designed for tsunami purpose, so they were not really caring about some artifacts like this. So you can see the ISO lines from nautical charts coming out in this DM. So we had to smooth all this stuff to avoid having any perturbation on the tsunami propagation during the simulation. Also, what you can see is that the land part of the DM is not showing good resolution on land, like here, for example, or here. So we had to integrate the last version of the LiDAR data provided by LINS, which is a 1 meter or 0.5 meter resolution DM. So lots of data sets to merge together with smooth connection between them, to be careful with the the altitude reference for each of them, to be sure that they are all referring to the same 0. And also we had to export all this data in one DM, which took lots of time, and we had to make some tests afterward to be sure that there are no artifacts or there are not any problems with the simulations. Yeah, in some places, as you can see here, the DM, there was no data, for example, in the rivers, so we had to make some interpolations. Basically to create fake data, but we can't do another way, actually. So most of the time, that's what we are doing because we don't have time to go on site and do proper measurements of the rivers. So that's how it's going on. Everywhere in the world, it's the same, actually. We're doing the same. So for the scenario selections, we had to select scenarios for the orange zone, for the yellow zone. So that's different types of scenario. For the orange zone, we had to identify the potential source region in the Pacific Ocean that were able to trigger 5 meter high tsunami at the coast in Bay of Plenty. And then we had to scale this 5-meter tsunami because obviously in our database at GNS, we don't have exact 5-meter reach in Bay of Plenty. Sometimes it's 5.5, sometimes it's 6, sometimes it's 4.9. So we have to scale them. And then we had to run them at mean sea level to see if this value is correctly scaled, and then we revise the source model if it's not correctly scaled, etc., etc. It's a loop process to finally identify the source and the slip distribution we want to use for all these sources, and then we are going to run them one by one in two inundation in Bay of Plenty. So it's a long process only for this selection of scenarios. For the yellow zone, it's another thing. We take the National Tsunami Hazard Model 2021 and oh, what is that? So we take the National Tsunami Hazard Model 2021 and we have to proceed with what we call a deaggregation. So basically we have scenarios that are producing inundation in zone 8 and zone 9, and we are going to check which of the source region in the Pacific Ocean are producing the more inundation for both of the zones. Actually, it's not the tsunami zone; it's the hazard zone. So it's more than 2 this time. It's all this single 20-kilometer long zones along the coast. So each of them has been tsunami simulation has been done for each of them, and we know that, for example, for zone 48, I may have, yes, I have this. So that's for zone 49, this one. So we know that for zone 49, which is located here, most of the tsunami hazard will come from the Kermadec. That's this blue area in the diagram. And then for the Whakatane North Crystal Fault, and then the Rokumara Outer Ice Fault, and then Tonga, and then Alaska, Kuel-Kamchatka, and others. And for another zone, though this time it's 55, so that's this one on the east region of the bay. It's completely different in terms of small sources, but the largest one is still the Kermadec, and we have the Rokumara Outer Rise. This results in a list of all these diagrams, and we select the 2 or 3 most important region, and for each of them we are going to calculate what we call a fault slip distribution. So actually the fault zone is divided in small patches, and each patch has some parameters, including a slip value. So the slip value is when the earthquake is rupturing the seafloor. You have an amount of slip on this earthquake, and this amount of slip is translated in this color. So for example, in the middle of the fault zone here, we have more than 30 meters slip on the fault interface, but on this other patch, still on the rupture zone, we have less than 5 meters. So we do that for one, we do that for another one, and we have 10 or 20 variation of slip, which is a good approximation of what all the possibilities that could happen on a rupture interface. From that, we are able to do this for the Kermadec event, and then we do it for a Crystal Fault event, and we do it for the Rokumara Outer Rise Fault. We have basically, so we have a set of different scenarios, which produce each of them different inundation areas, and we put together all these inundation areas in what we call an ensemble inundation area. And this ensemble, the inundation area, will help to design the hazard zones. For the red zone, it's completely different. If we want to follow the same process, we will have to run thousands of scenarios, because this time we are not looking at 5 meters at the coast, but only 2 meters, which may be linked to many scenarios. So what is commonly used in the tsunami community worldwide is to apply what we call the bathtub method. So basically on this scheme here, you see, if we want to have 2 meters at the coast for this red zone design, then you project the 2 meters straight on the topography, which leads to this value here, and which may produce some very large extent for the red zone. So most of the people applied what we call an attenuation law, which ends up to reduce the final run-up location. That's what we had applied for Bay of Plenty projects. For all this simulation, we are using a numerical model called COMCOT. So it's an in-house model that has been validated for the last 30 years or more, with many tests used in different parts of the world, and it's developed and maintained at GNS. One branch of this software is maintained and developed at GNS. I'm not going to deep in the details. The only thing you have to know here is that we can't use the Bay of Plenty DM as a wall in the simulation because it's millions of pixels. So it means days, weeks, months of calculation if we use it like this. So we had to focus on the coastline, and for this we had to use a methodology called the nesting. So it means that, for example, if we use we want to simulate a tsunami triggered in Chile, we will have one level of grid covering the whole Pacific Ocean at a very coarse resolution, and then going toward Bay of Plenty, we will increase the resolution. For example, grid number 2 could be the North Island of New Zealand with intermediate resolution, and the third grid level may be the whole Bay of Plenty at another coarse resolution, and then we will have another level focusing on Whakatane, for example, at a very high resolution of 10 meters, let's say. So we are increasing this, but
I was going to say, come in there. I think Mayor Luke has a question for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
hi, John.
Yep.
I was just wondering how long does it take to do a computational run?
Yeah,
I mean,
so for one simulation, it takes 2 weeks.
Right. So if I,
Yeah.
I was hoping that from the time you locate the point of an earthquake, you could tell us basically what was going to happen.
Yeah. So in the warning or the response processes, we have other tools able to do that more quickly. But it's different resolution, it's different purposes. In the case of inundation calculation, we need to go for 5, 10, 15 meters resolution, so it takes much more time to complete.
So I'm just wondering about the sensitivity to the source.
Yep.
I mean, if I understood one of the diagrams where the blue dots are, those are the source points. But what happens if you're off the trench? I mean, can you have a source off the trench? Does that make any difference, or is it not very sensitive to that?
Let's go back to this plot, right?
Yeah.
So actually, all our dots there are showing the how do you call that? The center of our fault planes. So it means that the scenario can be located anywhere on a rectangle of, I think the rectangles, the patch size are 50 kilometers times 25 for local or regional sources, and for the largest events in the other places of the Ring of Fire, it's 100 kilometer times 50 kilometers. So the blue dots you see there are in the middle of these patches of 100 times 50 or 50 times 25. So it encompasses potential events that are not really in the trench, but they could be a bit out. That's the one we call outer rise events. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Jean. Yeah, I think I'm just conscious that we want to keep a reasonably high level rather than going too much into technical details. I mean, it's fascinating, but we just need to keep on track.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so the result of this nesting is that we had to cut Bay of Plenty in several regions. So initially we were thinking that it's okay to cut it in 6 regions like this one, the black squares there, the black rectangles. But actually after many tests of simulation, we found that it was very, very long still, like 1 month calculation. So we had to cut them in much more grids of 29 actually. The result of that is that for each of these rectangle, we had to run one simulation. So for example, let's say we want to simulate one event from Chile to Bay of Plenty to calculate our orange zone. Then we have to run one set of simulation going to A 8.9 here, and then another set going to A 8.8, and then another one there and there and there and there. So we have lots of different calculation, and that's only for one scenario. So if we have 20 scenarios to run, we have 20 times 29 simulation to run. So this leads to something very complicated. At the end, we have to merge all these results because obviously what you wanted in this project is to have a global tsunami hazard orange zone or red zone or yellow zone for the whole bay. So that was another challenges that we didn't expect it at the, when we put together the proposal, and that's also why we had to postpone the deadline. So another modeling challenges we had, Bay of Plenty is a very nice region, but it has lots of areas that are under the sea level, which have been reclaimed on wetlands, for example. So it means that when we want to simulate them, at the start of the simulation, there is water in those zones, even if there's no water in the reality. So we had to find a way to dry these areas at the start of the simulation, which led to some development of our modeling code Comcots. But that was another challenge, to give you an example. And then at the end, we have all these scenarios produced. So that's for one scenario for the yellow zone, this scenario here, which produce some variations of amplitude along the coast. You can see here that there's a lot of amplitudes. Here there is a bit of inundation here as well. Here there's less impact. And then we put together all these maps to produce what we call the ensemble map for yellow zone. So you see that this area here is still visible, but for example, in this area, we have more amplification than on the previous one. Like for example, A 8.9, we had less amplification for this specific scenario, but when we put together all the scenarios, then you see that we have much more amplification. That's why we wanted to have all this slip distribution put together to see how it can react as an ensemble map. So we did that for yellow zone, we did that for orange zone, and for red zone it was done as a whole. But the result is this kind of map. So we have the red, orange, and yellow zone put together. You can see on this zoom that, for example, red zone is covering obviously all the marine areas. But the yellow zone is the one showing the largest extent of inundation, and in other places you have the orange zone coming above it. So it's very high resolution, as you can see. We have the roads, we have this airstrip here. Yeah, you can see the details. It's 10-meter resolution, or 8 meters even. And in addition to that, we've been requested to look at some critical infrastructures. What are the maximum wave amplitudes and currents that were happening for all the scenarios in orange and yellow zone around these structures, mainly bridges, marae, the moons, and other critical areas, especially the vertical evacuation here. Structure. And so we produce this table, which colors are linked to the thresholds of warning. So when it's green, the water depth, the wave amplitude is between 0 and 30 centimeter. When it's orange, it's between 30 centimeter and 1 meter. And when it's above 1 meter, it's red. This is directly linked to the beach and marine threat between 0.3 and 1 meter and the land threat above 1 meter. So we did that for the wave amplitude, and we did that also for the velocity, maximum velocity of the tsunami, the currents. So when it's above 1.5 meter per second, we consider it's a dangerous current for persons and navigation and infrastructure. And when it's less than 1.5 meter per second, then it's green. So we have this for all the different structures. You can have a detail in the report, and it's a bit there's a bit of explanation for each of them. And also we compared obviously our results with previous work that has been done in Bay of Plenty. So the previous work has not been done for the whole Bay of Plenty, but for some specific areas. But we were able to compare the results to show that our inundation results are not showing very drastic differences with this previous calculation. Yeah, and that's it for me. Tēnā koutou, katoa.
Thank you, Jean. It was an excellent presentation. Just stepping back a moment, I did have a question around the tsunami that's being modelled. Did I get correctly at the beginning? It was a 5 metre one, or was that the 5 metre amplitude out at sea, or what?
So you mean for the orange zone?
I just noted down that it was a 5 metre tsunami.
Yeah. So for the calculation of orange zone, it's in the DGL's recommendation. We have to find the tsunami that are producing 5 metre high wave at the coast, and then we have to simulate them for inundation. For yellow zone, it's completely different. We have to find the worst case scenario for our region. So yeah, it's the red zone is 2 meter at the coast. The orange zone is 5 meter at the coast, and the yellow zone is the worst case.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Jean? Mayor Tapsell.
Thank you very much. I found it incredibly interesting, although my council is Rotorua, it's not on the coast. But I did think, how long are these models sort of set for? Because obviously along the coast there also is some level of erosion that just occurs over time as well. In some areas, like I know particularly well, like Makutu, where you've got a coast that's eroding quite quickly in some areas. So totally not scientific observation, just a visual observation. And I just wonder how long can we expect this model to be sound for, which I presume is quite a while, but just wondering. Thank you.
Kia ora. That's a very good question and observation, actually. If I want to be correct, I can say that this model are already out of date because the topography has already changed since we did them. Probably in some regions there has been erosion because of a storm. In other places you will have deposition of sediments because of strong currents or coastal management or things like that. So yeah, we can't really say that it's what would I say? Yeah, it's no more up to date. Actually, even the data we use for building the DM were from 2023. Other ones were from 2016. So if we want to have something really showing the reality at this instance, we would need to have much more funding for going surveying bathymetry data or having up-to-date LiDAR data. Yeah. It's very tricky. Sometimes for some very small projects, we do sediment transport. So we know that the tsunami may be able to impact the coast and erode it in some places, deposit sediments in other ones, but that's very tricky. So to consider these kind of things, actually we have we had on our results, I think it's we had a small percentage of uncertainty in the inundation zone. So we know that even if the topography is smoother and the tsunami can go further, then in our simulation, we have considered maybe 5% or 10% more of inundation.
Thank you. I think best question, this might be more for Kieran or Paul. The presentation was talking about red and yellow and so on. And we've moved to blue evacuation zone. Can you explain the link between those and why we're still talking red and yellows and how that links to the blue?
Yeah, so at the time when we created the contract with GNS, we were working from the old director's guidelines, which still recommended the orange and yellow. So the yellows are, or the yellow modelling that John was talking about is going to be used to help us determine our new blue zone. So still use the orange and red data because that'll help us. It's sort of our back pocket, right? If we do get a tsunami that's smaller, we can identify those areas which the yellow zone or the yellow area that John was talking about is our new will be used to develop our new blues.
Because I was conscious when reading the report that we've just come out with brand new maps. Well, it's a year old now, but they're new maps with the blue, and then we're sort of going to change them again quite soon.
No, we're still sticking with blue, and that is the national direction.
But the extent of the blue is changing as a result of this.
That's right. Yep. So and that's the phase that we're moving into next to revise our new blue single.
I mean, it just made me think. I know you've got to work with the latest data, but maybe it would have been sensible to wait until we got this data before changing from the old maps to the new maps. But I guess that's a choice.
That was a decision that was made a couple of years ago to change and then revise. So that was
okay.
The nature of the decision at the time.
Luca, did you have a
I
question?
was just wondering about the effect of the offshore islands. Is it significant, or don't need to worry about it?
So you mean the effect in terms of volcanic eruptions or landslides, or the effect
like,
on the propagation of the tsunami itself when they come from
Things
Kermadec or?
Things like the refraction from the islands, is that a significant effect?
Yeah. There is a significant effect, like you can see on this presentation page. You see this this kind of amplification line here. Or this one here. It's directly linked to the topography of these islands. There are actually, when you have an island in the propagation path of the tsunami, there is something we call the wrapping effect. So the wave front is wrapping the island, refocusing the waves behind the island, and sometimes propagating like a secondary source of the tsunami behind the island. So yes, the islands have all an important role in the tsunami propagation and behavior.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Emmink.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Jean, for your report. My questions for Kieran. You said at the outset that there was a legoima that meant that all of this information needed to be in the public, and there could be confusion and misinterpretation. What are we doing to combat that?
Yeah, so we're working on a comms strategy at the moment. It's not something that this data will be a soft release, it won't be promoted as such, but it will be used to go on things like LIMS and that sort of thing. So we'll be prepared for when those questions get asked. If there is confusion, but we're not going to actively promote the data as such. So our focus will still be on the evacuation design, and when that applies through, that's going to be promoting, but we will be reacting. We are aware that those questions may come. So that's just the reality of what we're working on at the moment.
This is supplementary. So more and more risks and hazards are getting loaded up into the LIMS, particularly in a public space. It also gives insurance companies more ammunition to not insure, whether it's a community asset or your home. The more risks that go on your LIMS, that's going to decrease your value of your home, and you can't get insurance. Like, are we going to reach a critical point where, as Lucas says, it's just not going to work?
That's sort of beyond my realm of expertise, and I can't really answer that. I can imagine that there's going to be some
Rather hitting the road.
conflicting intentions in that sort of realm. So
I think Deputy Mayor Emmink, we're going to discuss that natural hazards on LIMS in the next item. So we'll cover that a little bit more then. But I don't see any more questions. So I want to thank Dr. Jean Roger for that presentation. It's been really helpful. Thank you very much for that. We'll move the recommendation, and then I think we'll have a short break for morning tea. So may I have a mover and seconder to receive the report? Mayor Luca, Councillor Campbell, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Thank you again, and we'll have a break until 11:45 for morning tea, and then come back and Okay, everyone. I think everyone looks like everyone's back here, ready to start. So we'll make back into it. So next item is sharing natural hazards information in LIMS, page 181, and I welcome Mark Iverme, Wayne Furlong, Charlene Pardee, and Namita Patasi's on Zoom apparently. So over to you, gentlemen, and take us away.
So my name is Mark Iverme, and I work for the Regional Council as a hazards planner. I'm ahead of Wayne Furlong, who is the team leader of LIMS at TCC. As a team, processing close to 4,000 LIMS a year. And today we had to share an update on natural hazard information in LIMS. This was a request from the last meeting in September. We have a short presentation covering the key points from the paper, changes to the legislation, regional collaboration, and next steps.
Kia ora katoa, Wayne Furlong, team leader LIMS at TCC. So on the first slide, have information about the changes to LIMS legislation, which came out of an amendment to the 2023 Lagoima Act in relation to LIMS. The legislation came into force on the 1st of July, so the legislation talks more to what needs to happen in the LIMS as opposed to how it needs to be displayed, which is more the regulations which are effective in October this year. So in terms of the what, the three main points up there, the first one being regional councils must provide territorial authorities with natural hazard information. By and large, this has already been happening for a long time, particularly in the Bay of Plenty. We've established quite a strong working relationship with the regional council. So any hazard information that the regional council has had to this point has already been shared. So I guess just to reassure the group that this is already happening. On top of that,
so just coming there, it does seem like an odd point that they had to legislate for that. Has there been issues elsewhere in the country where people have been a bit siloed or something? Or?
I think the main secondary point to that is in a timely manner. So that's part of the legislation. But I think you're not aware of any major issues in this region, but perhaps elsewhere there are.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess we do. There are times where draft information is received and then there can be a delay, or there has been in the past a delay in sharing the draft information with the territorial authorities because it hasn't been finalised and so on. So now part of the regulations, which will be effective 1 July, is also just including reference to draft information that has been received. We've also formed what's called the Bay of Plenty LIM Working Group. So that came out of the forum held in November last year. One of the national business forums held here. So together with all territorial authorities and the regional council, we've established quite a strong LIM working group across the Bay, where we meet on a regular basis to discuss changes to legislation, the changes to regulations, just ensuring that everyone in the group is aware of what everyone else is doing, including new information that the regional council may have, and preparing our LIMS with statements to reference that information. Second point there, around the limitation of legal liability for local authorities for providing information at LIMS in good faith. This serves the purpose of touching on the discretionary information that we may provide. And I believe it stemmed from the Kapiti versus Ware case from where the final decision was made in 2015, ruling in favour of Kapiti for including what they call shand lines for coastal erosion on neighbouring properties, where the person who was selling their home, who had ordered a LIM report, thought that it devalued their home. The ruling was in favour of Kapiti because it had the potential in the future for those 50 and 100 year zones to potentially slip And again, this is something that's being written into legislation now. DIA providing guidance on what known and potential means and how we need to approach that in our limbs, which will form part of the regulations 17 October. So it really comes back to councils being able to confidently provide information in a limb report. We're simply providing a mechanism for the purchaser to make an informed decision. So we're not necessarily saying it will slip, but we have information, so we're providing that information to you.
Now,
That's all very well, but the problem is that the certainty with which, I mean, you provide information that's best current knowledge, and the reader, like what happens a lot in science, now they take it as, this is what's going to happen, but it's not like that. So you need to communicate very well that this is what we know today, but there's no, there's a great deal of uncertainty around it. And so I'm just not sure how you get that through to the public and the
So I guess
purchaser.
to answer that question, with the new regulations that are coming effective 17 October, one of the new regulations is also providing plain language summaries. So we will, in our limbs, need to provide wording to explain the effect or the impact of the information that we're providing in the limb in a plain language summary. So in words that someone would be able to read, understand the full extent of what it.
I guess I can understand the plain language, but even with plain language, that doesn't mean to say that there's an appreciation for what's being presented, right? This is what we think we know at the moment, but it's got a lot of uncertainty built into it. How do you get that through to people? I mean, that's plain language, right? But the appreciation of it is not necessarily there. Anyway, yeah.
There's one improvement that might help with that, and that's distinguishing between climate change mapping or information and information that's valid now, today. So for flooding, for example, there's a future scenario, which could be 100 years into the future, quite a lot of uncertainty due to climate change projections. So that's something that can be explained in the new structure of a limb. I think that will help.
Yeah, it's just a difficult thing to convey, that's all. The degree of uncertainty that's involved. All right, thank you.
And that final point, the top half of the slide around including information on cumulative or combined effects. So this is where climate change has been written into the legislation. We now need to consider sea level rise on climate change. And again, there are multiple scenarios that could be mapped out for that. Again, we do already provide this information in our limb reports currently with our coastal inundation information, taking into consideration sea level rise at certain levels up to 1.5 metres over, I believe it's a 140-year period. And again, that piece of legislation is only where we have existing studies. So the mechanism of the is not to then undertake further risk assessments, because we know that climate change is happening, and we know that coastal inundation is happening. If we have the two studies separate, we need to present them separately, but if we have them combined, we will present them combined. We don't even need to undertake a study to combine them if they're not already. So it's only where we have existing information that we must.
To you, Mr. Chair. When you have infill housing or subdivision, so you say you've got two properties down a driveway that have been there for 40 years and they're subdividing at the back there. So does the limbs, after the evaluation of, let's say, a bit of flooding, see there's flooding and they had to dig up some pipes or something, is that going to be listed on the new properties limb, but will it also re-affect now the existing properties that are already on that same site?
So the LIM report is specific to a legal description. So if the property has been subdivided, where it was previously one larger lot, and there was a previous LIM which displayed information on flooding on, let's say, the house in front of the subdivision, but it didn't affect the back half of that property. Once the subdivision had occurred, if the flooding still only occurred on front property, we would no longer need to include that on the back property.
How much detail does the impacts go into on the limb? So I know the situations, for example, where the flooding is that the letterbox at the bottom of your driveway gets flooded, but the house is up a bit further and doesn't flood, and homeowners get upset because it implies the whole property's valued, and it's no real value, no real impact.
We normally include a map showing the extent of flooding. The map would be accompanied by a key, which the colours on the map would be interpreted into the depth of the particular flooding. And then if the applicant to the LIM had further questions, we would, in the direction of the team who generated that information, they would be able to converse with them to understand it in more detail.
Another question. Aside from the community information that we're going to have to share, this might be worth a presentation just to the Real Estate Institute because this is going to create a whole lot of impact for them as well to the side.
Just to answer that, you don't need to worry about that. It's already been.
They're already on it?
Yeah. LIMs are a legal document that to average shouldn't be just trying to interpret themselves. So with the new system, will you be putting in there that legal advice is clearly needs to be stated that this needs an legal opinion. Like, don't just try and interpret this yourself, because someone that looks at them all the time can still fall foul to something that's on there, and it's often the example of an existing property being subdivided. What in fact, yes, it doesn't always catch what's happened at the front many years ago. It doesn't catch up. So these should be. It should be really clear. This isn't just for someone just to interpret themselves.
So the second part of that slide was talking to the regulations, which are effective 17 October. The regulations are more around clarifying how the information looks in them. Has things like this plain language summaries, introducing each hazard with its own set title, just to be clear about what it is, to avoid duplication, having the natural hazard section of the LIM contain the majority of the information, and then cross-referencing back to, let's say, the district plan, flooding information generated through the district plan, cross-referencing back to the Building Act if it was a Section 72 notice, which refers to being able to build in a natural hazard zone. So it's really about making the information that we receive from Regional Council and the information that we already hold and the way that we present it in our LIMs, making it more clear and understandable. And to that effect, there is a group which I'm involved in with the DIA as well, where we are forming guidance at a national level. We hold regular workshops to discuss specific scenarios, and then DIA are releasing information as we create it, with the first lot of guidance released on the 25th of June, this last week.
So this is just a quick figure just to show you how the information flows from the Regional Council through to the District Council. So a good example is the tsunami information, which the Regional Council funded. We've received that now from GNS. We've advised the TAs that we expect to release that to them in July, so by the end of this month. And we're currently processing it within our own GIS systems. Once we're ready to go, we provide that to each TA, the letter signed off at a manager's level. It includes the plain language summary, and perhaps we need to include some of the limitations and descriptions around uncertainty that have been mentioned today. We also provide a link straight through to our mapping portal. Once the TAs are ready to share that, normally through a direct letter to each property owner. After they've done that, we publish it ourselves on our mapping portal, so it's available for anyone, not only within the LIM process, to receive. And just a final note, we are currently updating both those tools, the Bay Hazard Viewer and the website, so it can accommodate the new regulations.
I don't need to speak too much to the slide. I believe I've covered most of the information on the first slide already. So in terms of next steps, collaboration, we will continue to meet regularly as a working group. To meet with UIA to feed into that practitioner working group as well. We're well aware of changes that are required to be made, and to make sure that we're able to effectively implement them prior to the 17th October deadline for those regulations. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, any questions, anyone?
It's a grim presentation. Thank you very much for us to consider.
Do you mind more just to summarise? I'm waiting for that plain language summary. I'm pretty good at plain language, but crikey, some of this stuff is frightening, to be honest. And I was just talking to Ian before we had a cup of tea about just how we're going to go out to the public with some of this information and who's going to be liable when it all turns to tears. Hopefully it's the mayors, not the regional council. No, look, honestly, it's something we need to stick together on this one, because by crikey, I can see the leaky buildings coming looming over the hill at us. But I know a lot of people that have got substantial investments on a Hopi Beach, for instance, and if we don't get it right, could be fun. Thank you for the report. Excellent report. And I understood a little bit better than I understood John Rogers say, but that's because he's a scientist. Victor probably picked it up better than I did. Thank you.
Okay, it sounds like you'd be happy to move that.
Yes, I would.
Councillor Campbell.
Yes, I would, Chair.
Is there a second over there? Mayor Moore. Any debate? I'll just say thank you again for the report. And yes, we'll see how that goes. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. That's carried. So we now move to the NEMA update. So Lily, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you through the chair. Mō ora kia tātou. NEMA regularly provides a written update, so that's available in the agenda. To summarise the key points, the emergency management bill is on its way. We invited submissions between the period of April and May. We received roughly 400 substantive submissions, which is incredible to see NEMA policies working tirelessly through those submissions to ensure your views are incorporated into the bill. Exciting. The minister's indicated that the EM bill will be in place this central government term. In terms of the emergency management system improvement plan and emergency management system sector operational systems, in addition to the written update, NEMA has published that online now, so that is available for you to see there. In terms of key points, there I just want to cover that MSIP and MSOS is another step in the government's response to the government inquiries and North Island severe weather event reviews. It is in line with the 14 level recommendations in those reports. Phase 1 of MSIP was really mapping out what the government wanted to see in terms of this program. Phase 2, which is now complete, was really determining that roadmap, which operationalized and talks about how the system will be invested in. So that is what is available now. It will strengthen community leadership, ownership, fairness, clarify roles, strengthen accountability, set standards, and provide assurance, make leaders more accountable, and build a trained exercise workforce, update warning systems, and modernize integrated technology and facilities. I want to speak to the key initiatives of that roadmap. There's about 6 points there. So the roadmap intends to implement regional support teams to really support that these events are really needed to see as a requirement. So that's a key initiative there. We want a refreshed and increased resilience fund to empower more communities to respond for the emergencies. Currently, it's generally $889,000 plus GIS, so we should see more investment into that space in the future. Agreements and partnerships with businesses, iwi Māori, and community organisations to enhance local readiness, to really professionalise the emergency management sector pathways, create proactive procurement and placement of critical equipment and supplies. And finally, what links to that MSOS piece is a common operating picture to support shared situational awareness and decision making. So Cabinet has agreed to the roadmap in principle. There is further policy work that is in place. Really, this is the passage of enabling our legislative requirements, a framework, and availability of new funding to budgets. What I want to assure you is that NEMA is prioritising activity that can be delivered from our current baseline, and then we're working with government to see if future funding might be needed. In terms of the CEDAM Resilience Fund, I wanted to congratulate Whakatane District Council for their tsunami evacuation planning and Whakakia Te Kite Roki, which I believe is through Rotorua Council, for their marae resilience preparedness applications that they are successful with for this financial year. And finally, for awareness, the tsunami evacuation guidelines are updated and publicly available online. The final point, in addition to the other final point I just said, what I wanted to share from a national level in terms of the insurance, which I think is importantly being talked about today, is NEMA, the National Hazard Commission, and the Insurance Council have agreed on a new partnership agreement, really about how we work together at that level. To the earlier point, I did want to follow up about the specific information I can give into that piece there. That's it from me. Any questions?
Thank you, Lily. Any questions for Haya? Looks like we've covered everything, so thank you. So I'll call for a mover and seconder to receive that report. Mayor Luca, Mayor Moore, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So the last item for the open part of the agenda is the verbal update from our director, James. So
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I should have liaised with Lily, but I can reinforce some of the points and put a local lens because I am encouraged by that roadmap that you referred to. That was circulated last week in Lisa's director's update. But if you haven't got it, please sing it and we'll get it to you. But look, I wanted to start MBOP vacancy management. You've met Mr. Greenshields. Paul comes back to the BRPRC family after a time away at TCC, brings a wealth of EM experience, sorry Marty, but brings a wealth of EM experience and is now the planning manager leading that team that Chris Brewer was looking after for a few months. Apologies to Mayor Luca. We also coached Justin Young back out of Whakatane to to come and join us in the MBOP office. He's not lost to the region at all. He'll be knee-deep in capability development of our workforce. So again, brings that wealth of experience and, most importantly, local contacts, particularly out here in the east. I did want to touch on EM workforce generally. You saw from the first paper, we have 4 amazing people coming on to the recovery roster, but we have 3 people who have made significant contribution leave. And so that challenge around maintaining an EM workforce, particularly in the local government environment that is so rapidly changing around us, is a challenge. And to rise to that, Mark and I have commenced a bit of a roadshow to meet with the respective CEs around the region and talk and, more importantly, listen to the challenges faced by local government in being able to respond, trying to better understand how the group can assist. And also encouraging where we must be to those leadership teams in the respective councils to make some decisions. We had a very, very productive meeting 2 weeks ago, I think, out in Apotiki, and tend to replicate that around. But I just wanted to raise that as an ongoing risk around the country, around maintaining a capacity and the capability to respond and so. I'd share that with you and happy to take any questions on that. I also wanted to touch on the director's influence, not because Mark is going to do my performance appraisal in the near future, but actually I don't always get what consumes him in Wellington for the week and sometimes more that he spends in there each month. And obviously some of it is sensitive and he shares what he can. I do want to share with you, you may be aware, he chairs the EMLG, another acronym. So that's the national leadership group for group controllers and directors around the country, 16 of those. And he represents us on a number of SIGs, special interest groups, another acronym, and there will be a test on some of the acronyms. Really bringing that local and regional perspective into the discussions that are happening as the sector starts to change and reform. Mark's leadership was formally recognised a couple of weeks ago at CAG by John Price, the National Director from NEMA, and John spoke very warmly about the significant contribution that Mark is making to the sector nationally, particularly as he corrals a whole lot of new group managers, 16 of them, coaches, mentors, and corrals them, but also representing this community. So I wanted to give you that reassurance that the local and regional voice is being heard, certainly being represented in Wellington. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was really what Lily pointed to, that roadmap. I'm really encouraged. I'm a naturally cynical beast. I wasn't sure what we would get out of that, but actually from a local government lens, which I bring into this new role, there are some great initiatives, ambitious roadmap from 26 to 31, but some really good stuff that I think should give you and your communities encouragement. So the development of public readiness programs, and we talked about that, Councillor, and one of your earlier questions with the annual plan. So a lot more resource going in to enable communities, and particularly self-resilience is something I hear John Price talking about quite a bit. Better local government resources in terms of capacity and capability building. As Lily alluded to, a full-time deployable surge support into areas that need them most. That might be the smaller councils or depending on the nature of the event, and expanded recovery focus that Julian Rewitty is very active in Wellington and providing input in there. And the common operating picture that I, as a controller, I'm looking forward to. That's the data sharing potentially from police, DHBs, so that as controller in a big event, you've got some really good situational awareness early. That'll be a big piece of work. So again, I think it's an ambitious roadmap, but I'm really encouraged that the local lens is on there, because that's where the rubber will meet the road. And I think that's where the Minister has indicated the future reform programs will enable or should enable local delivery. So happy to take any questions on that.
Well, thank you, James. So update. Any questions for Acting Director? Just unlimited silence, so that's all good. Just checking online, there's nothing there. Okay, so I call for a mover and seconder to receive that verbal update. Mayor Luca, Mayor Campbell, all those in favour, please say aye. Carried. So we're going to move to the public excluded section. So I'm going to move to excluded public. May I have a seconder, please? Mayor Luca, all in favour, please say aye. Against.